Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony.
It's great to
Appreciate
have
you
you,
having
man.
me on.
Yeah, it's definitely an honor having you because, like I said before, I feel like personally, like you're the best in the field just because of your reach and all of the work you've done. I've been following you for quite a while. I got so much value, and I'm personally here from yourself. Like, what is the story that got you into this, and also like, what is the spark that wanted you to do this as a living?
Yeah, appreciate that. Those kind words. It's definitely I take pride in putting out lots and lots of free materials over the years and really just letting people know that natural vision improvement exists and that it's accessible. That was kind of one of my intentions and goals from the start. But like even thinking back before I felt like motivated to want to share this stuff with other people, it was really just a personal project. I was actually doing some traveling. I was in Iceland and noticed somebody wearing a pair of pinhole glasses, which kind of caught my eye. These strange looking glasses with black plastic lenses and holes poked in them. So that kind of opened up this Pandora's box of him telling me about natural vision improvement, the Bates method. He had just come from studying the Bates method in India. So he actually was kind of my first vision teacher, so to speak, but it was very casual. He was just teaching me some of the basics. And ultimately, I think the most important thing that he sort of empowered me to do was to quit my contacts because I was wearing contacts at the time and I had a pair of glasses with me while traveling. And that was actually the last time I ever wore contacts. I just made the switch back to glasses so that I could actually take them off and put them on throughout the day as needed, which was completely different than what I had done before that, where I don't know about you, but I just was told by my eye doctor to never take my glasses off, pretty much leave them on around the clock for all activities, whether near or far. Even though I didn't need them for near, I just left them on. So that was a huge game changer. And within just 3 months of taking my glasses off and trying some of these basic Bates method practices, my prescription already dropped. Like I already noticed some of the initial improvements happening. And that really piqued my interest and then made me kind of make a bookmark of like, okay, this stuff really works. I really want to come back to this when I have the time and energy to really fully focus on it. So within a few months, I really kind of refocused on it and then really kept going all the way with it and eventually got some help from a certified Bates method teacher in California who kind of made me, go the final steps with it. And then that's also around the time when I felt a very strong calling to actually dedicate myself to this work as well and kind of get on the mission of not only seeing how it worked for myself individually and kind of keeping it to myself, but really I wanted to share it with the world and see if other people wanted to experiment and try and see if they could get some improvements too. So been doing it for about 10 years now, and it's been extremely gratifying to help people navigate this path of self-healing.
Yeah, it sounds awesome, man. It's like a hero's journey, really. Like we have this issue in our lives, and we overcome it to the point that we really want to help other people because it's helped us so much, and it's very incredible to hear. Um, so for people that don't know, like, what is the Bates method, and like, what can it accomplish? Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, it's a great question because I know that I certainly had no idea what it was or how it worked when my friend in Iceland, introduced me to it. It was completely foreign to me. I had never heard of anything that was possible to maybe improve eyesight naturally. I grew up going to the eye doctor and just being told that you pretty much have to get used to this nearsightedness and astigmatism for the rest of your life. Like these are permanent problems that can only be fixed with either glasses or contacts or surgeries. And I kind of adopted that narrative and kind of believed that up until I learned about the Bates method, which gave me a new concept, a new narrative to follow, which is a more holistic approach to eye care. So that's kind of how I describe the Bates method is it's sort of like a holistic approach to eye care or a kind of a natural alternative to the traditional or conventional path of optometry, where we're treating symptoms with artificial lenses. We might have blurry vision, we might have an eye disease or things, and there is the field of optometry and vision science that have, provided us with treatments like glasses, contacts, eye drops, surgeries and stuff. But they're not always necessarily getting at the root cause of the problem. And to me, that's where the Bates method comes in, is to actually ask the question, well, wait a minute, why are you nearsighted? Why did this cataract form? Why is your eye pressure where it is? As opposed to just like, oh no, that's a problem, let's treat it and relieve the symptom. Let's actually ask the why and the deeper question. And not only that, but like, here's a whole set of practices and habits that are specifically designed to actually address those underlying root causes of all kinds of different vision problems. So I think maybe the one word answer to your question of what is the Bates method is just relaxation. It's like, can't get any simpler than that. Bates method is all about relaxation of the eyes and the mind, because the vision is not just physical in the eyeballs, it's a mental process happening in the visual cortex. So there's a combination of like kind of quote physical therapy things we can do for the eye muscles and the function of the eye organs. But there's also a whole set of kind of quote mental therapy or inner vision work that actually is involved in the Bates method too. So it's both physical relaxation and mental relaxation, with this whole idea that pretty much all vision problems are usually caused by some form of strain. So the Bates method is not eye exercises. It's not a way to just strengthen your eye muscles. It's actually recognizing I already have eye strain. That's why I'm experiencing this vision problem. So what type of relaxation approach can I take to address the eye strain, which is causing the problem? If I address the cause of the problem, maybe not only the symptoms will decrease, but then I'll be left with healthier eyes and a more functioning visual system. And it's called the Bates method because it's named after an eye doctor named Dr. William Bates, who lived from 1860 to 1931 in New York City. And he was sort of one of the pioneers of this whole natural vision movement. He was even kind of referring to it as like new ophthalmology. And so we're still kind of stuck with old ophthalmology where we're just treating the symptoms. And Dr. Bates was really trying to put forth this new paradigm of, let's try this new approach to ophthalmology. So, yeah, that's a little kind of in a nutshell, sort of what the Bates method is and who started it.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I'm curious, like, what is it that the conventional optometry system is missing? Like, I guess, why don't they know about this? And like why aren't they teaching it in a way that is effective for other people?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because usually when people learn about this, it's like, well, wait a minute, if this works, why isn't everybody doing it? Why aren't all the eye doctors encouraging their patients to try some of these self-care practices and things they can do at home? So there's definitely a couple different factors at play here. First of all, just philosophically, Dr. Bates was challenging the status quo. He was kind of retesting some of the original theories that our current vision science is based on, and that was not met well. And we see this in many fields, not just the field of vision, but when there's sort of this kind of renegade person kind of challenging the status quo, instead of that being embraced and people kind of like, looking more into that, they usually get kind of ostracized and shunned, which is exactly what happened to Dr. Bates. He was not really embraced by his peers 100 years ago. I'd say he was kind of ahead of his time a little bit. And so he made a really strong effort to try and convince other ophthalmologists to try this other approach. And he even implemented his approach in classrooms in many schools in New York and South Dakota to try and teach this to young children as they're learning how to use their eyes. But that's all gotten, once again, phased out again. So it's sort of a philosophical issue between the the allopathic and the holistic. There's also this like monetary factor as well that can't be ignored. Sometimes I kind of refer to that, saying from the Bible of, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats for a life. So to me, the conventional optometry is like giving you a fish. It's giving you this pair of spectacles that are pretty much a snapshot of your vision. Like you asked sort of what's wrong about conventional optometry is they're measuring your vision on this snapshot when you go into the eye exam, when most people are actually kind of stressed out and they're straining even more than they normally would. And so they kind of perform poorly on their eye exam. And then that's what they get prescribed. Coming back to this philosophical thing, that's an idea that vision is static. Like, here's these glasses, it's going to correct your vision to this one static state all the time, whether you're tired, whether it's day, whether it's night. It's kind of this more mechanical, sort of robotic way of thinking about human eyes. Whereas the Bates method understands that vision is fluid, it's flexible, changes all the time. When you're at the eye doctors, when you're at home, night, day, all these different factors. So there's that, but then the whole other monetary piece as well about, unfortunately, the optical industry is a very powerful and wealthy industry. And, that's how most eye doctors make a living, or how most optometrists make a living, is not necessarily from eye exams. It's from spectacle sales and contact sales. So it's really a livelihood issue as well, where maybe sometimes that side feels a little threatened by like, where are my customers going to go if everybody learns how to see without their glasses and contacts? But that's also flawed thinking, because not everybody wants to do the Bates method. This isn't for everybody. There's always going to be people who don't want to change their lifestyle. They don't want to change their habits. They just want to wear the glasses or the contacts or get the surgery. And that's totally fine. Like, my mission is just to like at least eke out a little pathway for people to explore alternatives who want to, because it's an option and we should have that choice. But that's kind of the third point that I wanted to make, is the philosophical debate, the monetary factor, and then also lifestyle change. This is not a quick fix thing. Like, you go to the eye doctor, you get a pair of glasses, or you get the surgery, and then it's kind of like a Band-Aid. It's like a quick fix thing. But the Bates method is a more long-term, gradual lifestyle change. It took me about 4 years to get off my glasses. And I don't think everybody's willing to put in the time and the energy and the dedication to really follow through with that. So I think it does kind of take a special kind of person to really, first of all, be attracted to the Bates method approach, and then to actually not just get initially excited about like, oh, that'd be cool, but then to really show up and keep showing up. So I think that's another reason why it hasn't like really caught on, or not everybody just embraces it. But that was one of my favorite things from the documentary we created about natural vision improvement. We asked the same questions to over a dozen other vision teachers like me, and one of them was like, what does the future of eye care look like to you? And one of my favorite answers was from the late Dr. Roberto Kaplan, who's an eye doctor who embraced the Bates system. And he kind of painted this picture of every eye doctor's office in the country or in the world having a vision improvement corner in the corner of the office, where you can choose, do you want to get glasses or contacts, or do you want to learn vision therapy and be more proactive with it? And it's not being forced on anybody, but it's just an option. And for people who are interested in it, they can make that choice. And so that painted a really beautiful picture in my mind of a nice future where it's not this kind of like us versus them, conventional versus holistic. It's more like, let's actually just work together to help people.
Yeah, I really like that. Makes a lot of sense. Something that came up during that, because this really reminds me of like Like you said, there's a lot of systems like that, especially like conventional health and holistic health. It's really kind of the same story, no matter what domain. If you think about that as like an overarching thing, like all the subdomains, like whether it's dentistry, eyesight, it's all kind of the same story. Something that came up is like, how do you think we can shift the culture in a way that people are more drawn to these types of things, like self-empowerment that leads to self-healing, and like not reliant on all these outside things unless like there's an emergency or something like that. Like how can we be drawn more of those in our own minds?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to think that, I'm kind of doing that in a sense with, kind of putting these podcasts out and sharing videos on YouTube and just making these things accessible. But I think, interestingly, I kind of think that actually something about the pandemic actually shifted a lot of people's focus to maybe making some big changes in their lives. A couple things. First of all, eye doctors were deemed as non-essential services during the lockdown. And so like people literally couldn't go to their eye doctor anymore. And I remember when I first learned about the Bates method in 2010 in Iceland, pre-pandemic, that was on my mind. I wasn't thinking about a global pandemic, but I was thinking like, what if something happened where all of a sudden I couldn't get contacts anymore? Like, how would I survive? How would I make it? And so that was actually one of my motivating forces that led me to want to improve my eyesight naturally. It's like, I don't want to be so dependent on the systems and other people for my livelihood and my just survival. So, I think that obviously it was a very unfortunate phase in our human history, but it really did get people maybe kind of thinking a little more proactively of like, what can I do for myself, as opposed to just relying on others. But your question also kind of reminds me of like something that I've wondered as well, which is how can we just, I don't know if this was sort of what you were asking about, but like, how do we get more people to maybe like use this type of thing as a prevention method as opposed to like a reversal method? Because like you said, unless there's like an emergency or some like acute situation where it's like I need a surgery or my vision all of a sudden has changed and now I'm going to try and improve it. It's like, how do we get people who, before they've even noticed visual decline or an eye disease developing, to just implement some of these correct vision habits and maybe some vision maintenance things, like we brush our teeth to keep our oral health good. Why don't we do anything for our eyes? So if you already have normal vision and you're just maintaining some visual hygiene, kind of regimen, then you might never need glasses. You might not need reading glasses when you turn 45. You might not develop cataracts later in life. So that to me is something that I don't really know the answer to, because usually people are drawn to take action for their health when something is wrong. Not when everything is fine and dandy. It's like, oh, I'm going to make sure I maintain this. It's more like, oh no, something's wrong. I need to do something about this. So luckily, the Bates method does help with the reversal thing and kind of preventing things from getting worse, maybe even leading to some improvements. But yeah, it's kind of like a paradigm shift of more people just becoming more conscious about health. And I don't know, maybe the people you've talked to about this in relation to your own vision or just talking to people about health in general, but whenever I talk to people about the Bates method or natural vision improvement, so many people tell me things like, oh, I've always had a gut feeling that there was something I could do, but my eye doctor never said, they always said I couldn't. Or whenever I explain how the eye muscles work and how we can retrain them through really simple protocols, really common response is like, that makes a lot of sense. That's common sense. Like, that's how the rest of my body works. Why have I been thinking about my eyes differently? So these are examples of just like paradigm shifts or mental shifts to really just get people just, first of all, realizing that something can be done for their eyes. And then from there, do they want to take action on it? Because once again, it's not this isn't for everybody, but for people who get really excited about it, then they need to know how to do it correctly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like a lot of people, they don't even know they can get well, even if it's like if we're not talking about the eyes, like if they have some type of chronic disease or something like that. Like a lot of people just don't know that they can actually get better. But then you said like they had this inclination, like oh, maybe it is possible. I don't know how to start or anything like that, right? So yeah, it's really interesting stuff right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of it. It's only when I have a sore throat or when I have a headache or when something is uncomfortable that I'm really conscious of my health. And then when I'm healthy and I'm feeling good, I'm not thinking about it at all. So it's easy to kind of let it slip a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's like I just met somebody last weekend who has 20/10 vision, which means that at 20 feet they can see 2 lines lower on the eye chart than someone with quote normal vision. So when I meet people like that, I really make an effort to be like, hey, like, first of all, I like to kind of pick their brain a little bit of like, asking them how they see so well, because Dr. Bates invited us to actually spend time with people who have really good eyesight and actually observe their vision habits and maybe even like emulate the way they use their eyes. So I always like just meeting people like that and kind of learning from them. But I also kind of suggested like, hey, like it wouldn't hurt to do some palming or some swinging or some sunning or some of these Bates practices just to kind of preserve the really good eyesight you already have. And I could see his eyes kind of light up a little bit of like, oh, that I've never really thought about that. I've always just, it's not that he took it for granted, it's just not on his radar. So once people realize like, oh, there are a few simple little things that would actually lead to better vision down the line. That's what I like people thinking about. What's my vision going to be like when I'm 60, 70, 80, 90? And what can I do today to maybe guarantee that it's going to be better then?
yeah, that makes sense. So for people who may be skeptical and like, is there any data behind this? Like, it sounds great, but like, is there any science behind it? Maybe you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, more and more is coming out. I mean, the pretty much I invite everybody to go to the source. I've mentioned Dr. Bates's name a couple times. He has a lot of material available, kind of backing up his original research in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But obviously, a lot has progressed in the past century. So definitely just within the past 10, 15, 20 years, there's been more and more that is backing up, if not the Bates method specifically, things like vision therapy, sports vision training. There's like professional sports teams, baseball teams that actually have vision therapists that come in and train the athletes' eyes to improve their response time and their visual acuity and these things. So it's like if these high performing athletes are getting the benefits from it, why can't the layperson do it, for their desk job or for their everyday life? So and it's been really cool actually to see people like Dr. Andrew Huberman and like the Huberman Labs podcast that's getting really, really popular, millions and millions of views per episode. And he's in the neurological ophthalmological department in Stanford, and has episodes dedicated to how we can improve our vision naturally. And he doesn't go as far as to kind of echo the claims that Dr. Bates made, which definitely kind of go into that realm where it would make people be like, wow, this is kind of an outstanding claim. Where's the research to back this up? But that's one of the things that really attracted me to Bates. It was like, whoa, this is some really impressive case histories and some success stories. So well, I'm in a project right now. We're putting together a multi-author sort of an anthology, natural vision improvement anthology with like 20 or 30 different authors. And at the end of one of the purposes of this book is to create a bibliography and a comprehensive list of studies, papers, science that's backing up the fact that the nervous system can be conditioned to change the vision. And I think that's going to be a really powerful kind of thing to point people to. is like, because right now there's a lot of research that's kind of scattered all around. So to have sort of like a centralized place where people can kind of go and look further into these studies will be really cool. So we wanted to have that released this year in 2023, but things usually take longer, especially the more parties are involved. But yeah, late 2023, early 2024, I'll be really excited to get that natural vision improvement anthology out there. But one of the other main people I'm working with on that, Dr. Ainoa de Federico, she's a vision teacher based in France and Spain and Mexico. And she has a great website she's also been compiling a list of research and studies. So like some of the different vision teachers in the community I'm a part of have kind of lists of those research and science backing either on their website or they have, a database of it. So I know that was important for me. When I was first looking into this, I was pretty skeptical. Like I said, I had never heard of it before. And so I really wanted to make sure that, there was things that suggested that this could actually work for my myopia and astigmatism. And so I really appreciate how my vision teacher gave me some of her own case histories of students that she had worked with. She's been teaching since the 70s. So she's had dozens and dozens and dozens of people get out of their glasses, drop down the prescription, get down to lower diopters. So like right when I started working with her, that really boosted my motivation and like, oh, maybe this really can work. But it really wasn't until I had my own clear flashes, my own personal experience of actually taking my glasses off and being able to read a road sign down the road that I couldn't before. That was like the ultimate proof. So that's my main suggestion for people is to, definitely do your research, look around and kind of study this stuff, but also try it and have an experience with it yourself and see if that actually proves it for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Like, 'cause I really like a lot of studies and like so many things, but ultimately it comes down to what's going to work for you because you're not the one in the study, right? And we're also individual. Like, it's good to have this generalization of things, but like your own experience of the thing, that's ultimately like the number one form of knowing. So.
Yeah, and I've mentioned a couple people's names today, like Dr. Roberto Kaplan. Like he has a book where he conducted a study and has data and statistics in there tracking different patients of his. Also, Dr. Ray Gottlieb, one of my mentors, he's a retired eye doctor who also has published studies and did a PhD on reversing myopia and things like that. So it's definitely out there. But, just be mindful when you are, especially going online and looking for things to back this up, because you're going to find both. Like, for example, the Wikipedia page of the Bates method is quite biased against the Bates method. And, that was actually another thing that kind of attracted me to the Bates method, because when I was doing my initial research, I found a good amount of controversy around it, where I was seeing all kinds of different stories of people saying, wow, this changed my life. I don't need my glasses anymore. And then other people saying this doesn't work. There's no scientific backing of it. And so it's very conflicting information, which once again is what motivated me to just kind of, okay, that's out there. What's in here? What's my experience with it? So I like what you said there, Anthony, of like, you're not the one in the study. So why don't you study yourself?
Yeah. Right? Yeah, I always like go back to the principles of nature. Like the body is designed to heal itself. Like no organ system is off limits with that. It's kind of a little crazy how we isolate certain things, but all of it's connected and all of it's healable. Even if we can't get 100% well, depending on our state or whatever the circumstance is, like I always say we can improve from where we are. So.
I love that. Yeah. And like, if anybody has any doubt about that, just think about the last time you got a cut and then it scabbed over and then your skin regenerated. And I mean, we are these living, breathing, regenerative biological organisms. And the human body, like you said, Anthony, it's like it is self-healing innately unless we get in its way. or
Yeah.
unless we kind of interfere with it by whether it's our diet or our lifestyle or our glasses. Right. And that was one of the first things that tipped me off to all this stuff was I was wearing contacts and glasses, but I was doing yoga, I was doing meditation, I was changing my diet, I was exercising, I was doing all the right things to lead to a healthier life, and I was getting healthier, but I still had really blurry eyesight. So it's like it wasn't until I took the glasses off, it's kind of like the glasses were getting in the way of my eyes healing in a sense. I needed them when I was a kid, but then I reached a point where I was ready to grow out of them. And so it's really unfortunate when we kind of get stuck in that mindset of like, oh, these are for life. These are permanent crutches. No, these are temporary tools that are going to maybe help you get through a difficult part of your life or a stressful phase. But check in with yourself again. Are you still in that phase of your life? Are you still under the same kind of stress? Like, we're always changing, and every 7 years we have all new cells in the body. Everything regenerates, and we've got like new eyes in a sense, and new brain cells. So it's like we really want to keep making sure that we are putting ourselves in the right conditions for health and wellness. And sometimes that does involve taking the glasses off.
Yeah, for sure. Like the principles of the body, just it knows what to do as long as we remove the cause and then add what it needs. Like just get out of the way. It knows what to do really. Um, like you're talking about the glasses and like kind of fight for our limitations in a way. And when we fight for our limitations, like we get to keep them. So I think the first step is belief, and then going from there. Um,
I agree with
so
that. I think that everybody who has had success with the Bates method and they've seen improvements in their eyesight, um, they don't achieve that by remaining skeptical. They pretty much embrace the philosophy of natural vision improvement, and they believe that they can see better today than they saw yesterday, even if it's just a little bit. Right? Why did we adopt this mindset that I'm going to keep seeing worse as I get older every day? I'm learning more every day, but I'm seeing less. What That doesn't make sense. I'm learning more every day, and I'm seeing more, and I'm seeing better. So once again, it's an example of this kind of mindset shift and this paradigm shift of, oh, that was a limitation, that was a limiting belief that I adopted from someone else, right? It was told to be by my eye doctor, by my teacher, by my parents, whatever it was, or maybe by myself. It can be kind of self-imposed as well. But yeah, really liberating and freeing to start to kind of question some of these old belief systems that really are not helping us that much anymore.
yeah, that's a great segue into the Bates method. We're just talking about beliefs and mindset when it comes to the Bates method. Um, so let's get real practical for a moment. Like, let's start with the mental practices, like in terms of like memory, imagination. And we're talking about limiting beliefs of our eyes and whether it can get well or not. Like, how do we all start if someone wants to start today with the Bates method?
Yeah, definitely hoping to cover some practical things so people can actually try it themselves and experience it. And I really appreciate you actually inviting us to start on the mental side, because I think most people jump right to the physical. And a lot, like I said earlier, the Bates method is not eye exercises, so that's kind of the first thing to avoid is like make sure that we're not treating this like, okay, it's time to work my eyes out. So by thinking about the mental piece, that's already taking us in a different direction. We're not even really thinking about our eyes so much. It's more about the thinking or the mind, or how the mind pictures things or imagines things. So unless people are driving while they're listening, you can actually just close your eyes, and that usually creates this invitation for us to actually go from our eyesight to our insight. So sometimes just closing the eyelids is enough because you're blocking out the physical world. You can't see any physical objects when your eyes are closed, but your eyelid skin is still quite thin. So there's still light passing through the closed eyelids and landing on the retinas and stimulating the optic nerves. So we still might feel like we're kind of in some way, like we're still in the eyesight mode. So a lot of people benefit even more when they cover up the eyes, the closed eyes, with the palms, cupped palms. And that's called palming. And your hands are just there to block all the light. So they're not putting pressure on the eyes. It's just to create this blank canvas of darkness. Essentially, we're just shutting the eyesight off. We're switching from eyesight to insight. And insight is kind of what you mentioned, Anthony. It's your memory and your imagination. And essentially kind of like what your mind's eye sees, which is different than what your physical eyes see. So whether you're palming or you just have your eyes closed, it's just an opportunity to remember something visually. So right now, I'm remembering what I ate for lunch. So I made a little stir fry, and I'm just remembering the rice and the chicken and the kimchi that I stir fried all together in my cast iron skillet. So I'm also imagining the sound, the sizzling sound of the frying egg. Maybe when I crack the egg open, I can hear that cracking sound. So it is an insight thing, because I'm also sort of imagining the shapes of the rice, the colors of the kimchi, but we can also incorporate the other senses. It can be auditory, it can be kinesthetic, it can be taste, right? So what did that first bite taste like? I'm imagining the texture, the heat, the taste sensation of that fermented kimchi, that kind of tang that it has. So as I'm playing with this memory, I'm just remembering something that, just happened 30 minutes ago, but it's just a recent memory, and I'm taking time not to physically see anything with my eyeballs, but actually to remember something with my inner vision. And sometimes this is referred to as visualizing or visualization. But honestly, even sometimes that word messes people up, because they're like, well, I don't see anything, and then they're straining and trying too hard. So I really prefer to just stick to remembering or imagining or pretending like you can see something even though you can't. But this is kind of the starting point, is we're activating this other part of our vision. Dr. Bates said that vision is 90% mental and 10% physical. So when your eyes are closed and you're actually activating your brain through memory, imagination, that's actually creating more of this neuroplasticity effect that can actually help with the visual cortex, because you don't see with your eyes in the front of your head, you see with the visual cortex in the back of your brain. So just by me sitting here with my eyes closed, remembering that stir fry, it's like different parts of my brain are activating and firing with the intention of that creating mental focus and mental relaxation. The idea is that if we can get the mind to relax, then the eyes automatically relax. But that's just one example. Like the lunch thing, the stir fry, like the thing I love about the memory and the imagination is that you have infinite potential. You can really play with this, and everybody gets an opportunity to learn about themselves when they go within and they just understand how their mind operates and what is easy to remember and imagine and visualize, and what is difficult to remember and imagine and visualize. So my kind of follow-up thing to that is the stir fry thing was close, right? Like I was cooking within arm's length. I have a background of nearsightedness, which means that I could see clear near, but blurry far. So if I want to improve my far vision, it's not going to be just about imagining a bunch of up close stuff. You know what I mean? It's about, can I imagine something far away with my eyes closed? Because prior in my life, when my eyes were open and I look in the distance, it would be all out of focus. So I had to start closing my eyes and starting to imagine, what would that car look like across the street if it wasn't out of focus? So I'm using my imagination to picture a clear car off in the distance. And I couldn't do that at first. Like, I could only imagine things up close because that was a product of my myopia. So as I got better and better and better at imagining smaller and clearer details farther away with my eyes closed, that started to lead to physical clear flashes where when my eyes were open, I would see the car physically more clearly, or I would read that road sign with more detail because I was improving my imagination and my memory at that distance. So that's a little nuance there that not everybody picks up on, because they're like, oh, I've been doing, well, first of all, a lot of people palm their eyes, but they don't visualize. So that can be kind of a missing piece. But then even if people start visualizing, they might only be visualizing in their comfort zone where it's already easy and they're not really kind of challenging their inner vision stretching. So yeah, that's a pretty straightforward way to get started to hit both the mental and the physical, because the remembering and imagining and visualizing things is mental, but closing your eyes or even palming your eyes is a physical relaxation response. Usually our nervous system relaxes when we close the eyes or we palm the eyes. So we're kind of doing both the mental and the physical at the same time with that one.
For sure, yeah. Like a big part of the Bates method is like it's being present and actually like aware of what you're doing. Because if our mind is elsewhere, then we're not really getting the benefits out of the practice. And this is where I like kind of draw the parallels between like personal development and the Bates method. Like
Totally.
because it kind of takes you through some very interesting visualization practices. Like you wouldn't necessarily think about like focusing on the details and near and far and all that in normal visualization. So I really like that. Yeah, and just being like totally present, no matter what it is. Like if we're focused on like I don't know, if we're focused on improving our finances, like we have to be super present for those practices as well for them to work. So like these basic foundational principles that we really need to apply, not just to the eyes, but like life itself. So I think like it's a great training program for that as well.
Yeah, and that's something that you mentioned before we started recording, was how, you know, your experience with the Bates method kind of showed you how it has much more to do than just with the eyes. You know, it really goes much deeper than that and has these other implications in how we live our lives and how we understand the world. So yeah, a lot of really cool parallels can be drawn and some nice life lessons can be learned by studying the Bates method.
Yeah, for sure. Like limiting beliefs and I know that we talk about like the emotional root cause of things.
Yeah.
Like for the eyes, and like a lot of people have certain incidences that happen before their eyes get worse. Not always, but like sometimes gradual, but like whether it's a stressful event or I hear like a move being a common one.
Yeah.
Like why is it that these events kind of lead to these poor vision outcomes in the long term, that you think?
Yeah, first of all, the phenomenon that a life event or a life experience can lead to a change in your physical eyesight is the first step, to just recognize that there could be a link there. Because I know before I learned about the Bates method, I did not make that connection. I kind of just assumed, well, I didn't assume, I was told by my eye doctor that I was myopic because it was genetic, and that I had these defective parts in my head. You know, my eyeball was too long. It was a defective part. I couldn't do anything about it. But then when I started to look deeper into it and say, oh, well, maybe my eye muscles are squeezing my eyeball chronically as a stress response from some stressful event or experience that I witnessed with my eyes. So just a reminder to everybody listening that pretty much everything you experience in your life enters through your eyes. And, you know, our other senses as well, obviously our ears and the other gateways there. But our vision is kind of our main primary sense that we really base like so much of our life on. So when you see something, when something disturbing passes through that gateway of the eyes and enters the mind, if we don't have the tools to be able to deal with that or process that, then that can result in a desire to want to protect ourselves. And usually a way to protect ourselves from a disturbing image is to look away or to close the eyes or to blur it out. So it's a self-preservation thing. It's amazing that the human body can like protect us like that when we're in a stressful situation. But then the question is, how do we get out of that? You know, how do we not get stuck in that stress response or that sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, you know, kind of blurring out sort of thing? And unfortunately, a lot of children are brought to the eye doctor in that state, right? When their vision is changing because of some other life event, and then they get prescribed a pair of glasses, and then that gets kind of locked in. And now they're sort of stuck in that sympathetic state because the glasses are kind of keeping them there. So but not everybody responds to these stressful situations with blur. Some people get all the way through school and they don't need glasses, or you know, they get through a stressful job, you know, and their vision isn't affected negatively. Or there's plenty of like gamers out there who play video games all day long and they have perfect eyesight. So it's not a guarantee, like you said, but just to know that that link is there, and knowing that, oh, maybe, first of all, it's Bates' method is not eye exercises. So what can I do to relax my eyes, like we already talked about? But secondly, what do I need to do to actually process some of these fears, these traumas, these emotional things that are based more in the psychological roots of vision change? And that was a big part of my journey, was actually going through and cleaning some of that stuff up and actually looking at things that I had been ignoring for over a decade. And when I actually finally looked at those kind of shadow parts of myself and processed them and dealt with that, that was a different form of self-healing of my eyes that just doing the memory and imagination and other Bates practices and stuff wasn't necessarily getting at. So really appreciate you bringing that up, because people can really think about maybe that first pair of glasses they got and maybe backtrack, you know, 6 months to a year before that, and just sort of see what was going on in your life. Where did you live? Who were your friends at that time? You know, if you were in school, what grade were you in? What was your teacher's name? Who were your classmates? But also, what was going on in the world? Like, it's what were some big world events, current events that were happening? Because a lot of times, as we grow up, our vision of the world expands. I remember when I was a kid, I used to think the world was just my cul-de-sac that I grew up on. You know, like I just had a limited view of the world. And then as I got older and I started learning about other states and countries and people all around the planet, we see all the suffering that's happening in the world and all these stressful things that are happening. So if a little kid, you know, all of a sudden hears about this war that's happening across the world, that can have an effect on how they're seeing, you know, locally. So it definitely goes deep and definitely worth people kind of exploring. And just what I like to say is it's getting clear on your own personal vision history or your vision story, because everybody has such a unique vision story that has shaped their vision through their life. And we can still continue to reshape it how we want to.
Yeah, for sure. I like to point people to something called overall stress load, like whether it's nutrition stress, mental stress, emotional, relational, financial. All these things kind of add up into our overall stress load, which is why some people may or may not experience things. Like we know 90% of physician-related visits are for stress-related illnesses.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's basically like how resilient are we? How good are we at emptying the bucket, so to speak? And like that basically kind of dictates whether or not we get some type of ailment. So in the end, it's really, really important to learn how to be more resilient overall. So
I like that word, resiliency. Because yeah, I think that really applies to the vision where, the visual system can only take so much stress and strain before it literally shuts down. And then it's like, well, how do I empty that bucket, or how do I recharge the visual system? Why don't we take some time to palm? Why don't we step outside, get some natural light? It's like solar panels. We need to recharge the eyes with the natural sunlight. Like movement is very stimulating to the eyes, and so many people are staring all day. So can I blink and shift and swing my eyes around more? And these are the things that keep that stress and strain in check, so that it doesn't pass over that threshold where then all of a sudden it's causing negative effects.
yeah, for sure. I'd like to touch on the physical practices as well. Like looking in the distance. That's like a foundational one, palming, sunning. To speak to that, because we know that a big part of it is the physical while incorporating the mental at the same time. So like what are some of the physical things that people do with the Bates method in order to see improvements?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of the Bates system is based on this idea that a lot of vision problems, whether it's blurry vision up close, blurry vision far away, astigmatism, or some combination of these things, is partially caused by muscular strain, so tension of the extraocular muscles. We've got these 6 powerful muscles around each eye. There's 2 oblique muscles that wrap around the middle like a belt, and then 4 recti muscles that attach on the top, bottom, left, and right, and they go straight back behind the eye. And yes, these muscles are primarily for moving the eye within the eye orbit, so we can look all around in different directions. But Dr. Bates also discovered that they can also affect your axial length, which is the length of your eyeball. So if it's long forward or back, elongated, or if it's flatter from forward to back. So this is kind of an important concept to realize that maybe the distance is blurry because the oblique muscles are too tight and tense, and they're keeping the eye stuck in the near focus position. That's why it's called nearsightedness. Or maybe if you can't read things up close without reading glasses, it's because the other muscles, the recti muscles, are keeping the eye too flat in the far focus position, and then it's difficult to read up close. So whether it's one set of those muscles or the other, the answer or the solution is to bring relaxation into those muscles. Not so that they just become limp and useless, but so that they're not in a state of chronic strain and tension. They're in a state of dynamic relaxation where they can engage and disengage as they need to, so that the eye can elongate for focusing close and then flattening for focusing far. So since I was nearsighted, I knew that my oblique muscles around the middle of my eye were the culprits. They were kind of the problem muscles that needed relaxing. They needed to let go. So when I would do my physical practices like palming, covering my eyes, or sunning, keeping my eyes closed, letting the sun shine on my closed eyelids as I swing side to side, always moving, going back and forth between sunning and palming, I imagined my oblique muscles relaxing, because these are involuntary muscles. It's not like I can just tell them to relax. But if I palm my eyes and sun my eyes and swing my eyes with some gentle movement practices, movement really loosens up tight eye muscles. We all know this from stretching and exercising and stuff. It's the movement that frees the muscle. So that's one of my other favorite ones is the swinging practice, either just turning the head side to side and letting the eyes freely kind of scan the space, or even a more kind of full body swing like you might find in like Qigong or Tai Chi. But all of it is about loosening up those tight eye muscles so that when they get relaxed enough, they can actually start to respond correctly as opposed to incorrectly.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Analogy that came up is like if you're doing like a strength training in a session, like in the gym, and you have like all these sore muscles for a couple days, and you do some mobility work. You maybe do some walking, some dynamic recovery, and just feel so much better. Like you can function better, you can move better, and basically like your body just is able to function naturally. So
yeah, and all of this is done without glasses on. So palming, sunning, swinging, all the Bates method practices are meant to be done with the naked eye so that you have the most flexibility. Because anytime you have artificial lenses on, it's kind of encouraging some eye strain and tension to remain. So what I did when I was improving my eyesight is I would have no glasses on. I would step outside. I would do my long swings. So I would actually just swing my body 90 to 180 degrees and watch the world swing by in the opposite way. It's very soothing, very relaxing. And I was already outside, so I would just do some sunning. I would let the light land on my closed eyelids. I'd do the palming, make it nice and dark. And all of this was, yeah, to kind of create that mobility of the eyes. Whereas when I wore glasses and contacts, there was no mobility. I was staring a lot. My eyes weren't really moving very much. There's a lot of rigidity and tension up there in my face. So it's really about like, how can I loosen things up, get more circulation, more blood flow, more lymph flow, more energy flow, and things really start to transform when you just start, taking the glasses off, doing some relaxing practices, start getting more blood flow up to your eyes and your brain. And certainly when you start to bring in that insight piece and you're doing the memory and the imagination and the mental pictures, that's all the good ingredients for like starting to see some improvements.
yeah, for sure. I would imagine that like based on whatever someone is dealing with when it comes to their eyes, like they would customize the approach to them. Is that right?
For sure. Yeah. It always impresses me that the same core principles apply for everybody. So things like the relaxation, the movement, the shifting, some of the things we've talked about today. But yeah, certainly once I get to know my student, we really tailor it to them as an individual and really figure out obviously what's your prescription, what's your starting point measurements, what kind of symptoms are you dealing with? Because yeah, it is cool how the Bates method can help with so many different things, but there are some kind of specific things we might use for astigmatism that wouldn't make sense for, macular degeneration, for example. But that's why I've mentioned some things like palming and sunning and swinging today, because those work pretty much for everybody, no matter what the problem is. The sunning, maybe you want to be mindful of if you have any kind of light sensitivity. You don't want to like kind of overdo that, but that's actually my favorite practice in the whole Bates method is the sunning. So I'm a big proponent of that one.
Yeah. Like parallel to nutrition is like, eat real food, eat organic, local, seasonal, like the foundational principles, but then based on our own state of health and what we're dealing with, got to customize it to what works for us. Even though there's like principles that enable to, like whatever our direction is, like it enables that to work. So.
Yeah. And just on the topic of nutrition and the foods that we're eating, I just love when people start thinking about, well, wait a minute, what are my eyes eating?
Mm-hmm.
Because eyes are, your mouth is this hole in your face where you put food into, But your eyes are these other holes in your face that absorb light. So light is food for your eyes. And not all light is equal. Like you said, when you think about the food you eat, it's like, oh, I'm going to eat whole foods, organic foods, healthy foods, and I'm going to avoid the junk foods and the artificial ingredients and the flavors and the sugars and refined stuff. So we need to think about that with our eyes. Like some people talk about junk light, like they talk about junk food, where, too much artificial light or too much, LED or fluorescence can really have damaging effects on our eye diet, so to speak. And then things like natural sunlight are, that's the organic food, that's the health food for the eyes. And it's just so unfortunate that there's such a kind of negative narrative around sunlight in the health industry, and especially when it comes to the eyes. And so I really like it when people start to learn how important it is to make sure they're feeding their eyes a healthy amount of sunlight, because even if you have the most healthy organic food in front of you, if you eat too much of it, you're going to get sick. It's going to throw off your biome. You're going to, get nauseous. So same thing with the sun. It's not about overdoing it. It's about getting fed just the right amount.
Yeah, gradual exposure for sure.
Yeah.
Like it's like responsible for countless hormones, neurotransmitters, circadian rhythm. Like it really is like the source of all life. And like the more we can build a better relationship with the sun, I think the better off we're going to be. So.
Yeah. I mean, we are on this planet Earth that is 100% dependent on the sun. So I think that's a good notion to embrace, is that the sun is my friend if I treat it with respect and I don't overdo it.
Yeah. Last couple of things. I know you touched on this a little bit, but so if people are just starting, it's not just about like completely going cold turkey for most people when it comes to glasses. It's more of about a gradual decline in the use of them. Like still use them for maybe driving or any like text that you have to see specifically. But if you're doing something like, it's okay if everything's not perfectly clear. Like you can relax, and because vision, like acuity is relative. Like 20/20, like that's the so-called standard, but people see better, people see worse. So it's just kind of relax and accept what you have and then work from there.
Yes. Sometimes I refer to that as embracing the blur or working with the blur. Because I think a lot of people have a pretty negative relationship with blur, where they're almost kind of afraid of it. And they might have been told by their eye doctor that if you spend any time without glasses in the blur, your vision is going to get worse. And that is only true if you're straining. But if you take your glasses off and do what Anthony just said, which is to relax, it's an intentional time for relaxation. I'm taking a break. I'm not forcing myself to read that text all clearly or see that detail. I'm actually just taking time to rest. And we all deserve that. And we don't, give ourselves that enough. But I think that's a good first step. First of all, don't be afraid to take the glasses off. The first step, I said earlier, I did quit my contacts cold turkey, but I did not quit my glasses cold turkey. I kept using my glasses whenever I needed them, but then I would be a little bit more mindful about taking them off when I didn't necessarily need them. So we do want to think about that thing about embracing the blur, but we do want to watch out for blur adaptation, which is where we kind of spend too much time without the glasses, or we just kind of get too comfortable with the blur, and then we get kind of stuck there. So what we want to do is we want to keep using the glasses to kind of give the brain a dose of clarity of like, okay, that's what details look like in the distance or up close. And now when I take the glasses off, now that I've gotten my dose of clarity in my mind, in my memory, I have the glasses off now. I can't see the detail quite the same anymore, but can I remember what it looked like? Can I imagine what I just saw through the glasses? So now that to me sounds like you're using the glasses more like these tools to help you eventually see it without them. as opposed to feeling kind of stuck and like I can only see that with the glasses, right? So there's the whole thing about giving yourself permission to take the glasses off and giving yourself permission to put them back on, because I know a lot of people feel a little trepidatious about that. They're like, am I going to lose my results or my progress? But that's also where the training glasses come in, where maybe instead of, when you go to the eye doctor and you walk out with glasses or contacts, usually they are correcting you to 2020, or sometimes they're overcorrecting you to 2015 or 2010. So a lot of people, when they're doing vision training, they'll use training glasses, which are undercorrected. So they're bringing your vision not to 2020, they're only bringing it to maybe 2030 or 2040. So they are helping you a little bit, but they're not totally bringing you to that 2020 level. So that tends to be a conducive strength for people to wear if they're trying to adapt their vision system in that direction. But even if you just go from full strength 2020 correction to no glasses and back and forth like that, it still can work. Dr. Bates just said that it may slow it down a little bit. So it is technically possible to do it by quitting cold turkey, but it's usually not what I suggest. It's not usually very realistic. And really the only people who should be doing that probably are kind of like the low prescription people. Like if your numbers are more than like 3 or 4, you should probably be using some stepping stones, have a couple pairs to work down, as opposed to just taking that more extreme kind of cold turkey approach.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a cold turkey kind of guy. Like when I first took my glasses off, like I'm just like, oh, I'm just gonna deal with the blur. I don't even care. Like except when I was like going to school. Like other than that, I would just. And the thing is, I got used to it like really quickly. Like within a couple of weeks, I wouldn't want to have it any other way. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is kind of the original suggestion from Dr. Bates. Like 100 years ago, when people would go to Dr. Bates's clinic, and they would ask him a lot of the questions you've asked me today of like, how does this work? How do I get started? What are my instructions, doctor? Usually the first thing he would have them do is, permanently discard their glasses and don't put them back on. But the reason I said that's not always realistic is because, if you just think about how different our world is today compared to, 1919, 1920. So yeah, some people are able to make that work and they can see some really fast results. I think I took the kind of longer, more gradual path. And it's pretty cool that they can both work and everybody can kind of tailor fit this to their life and their schedule and everything like that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man, this has been amazing. I know like we talked about so many things in regards to the Bates method and the eyes and history and just a lot of practical things as well. So I know a lot of people are gonna get value from this and apply this in their own life. So I'm really grateful for that. If people want to know more about you and what you do, your site and any type of work you got going on, where can they go for that?
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate you once again inviting me on. This has been a very casual and easy chat with you. So it's been fun going through this with you. And I know we did cover a lot. So people may either want to kind of like give it another listen or maybe, look into some more resources, because yeah, I do have 2 podcasts, the Naked Eye podcast and the Better Eyesight podcast. And I put out a lot of videos on YouTube. If you just search for Bates Method 101, that's kind of my video series, kind of designed for people who are just starting off or they want to kind of learn some of the basics or some of the, maybe watch me demonstrate some of the practices we talked about today, like the palming and sunning and swinging. So like I said before, I do pride myself in just making a lot of this stuff available for free on YouTube and in the podcasts. That documentary I mentioned is also a really great place for people to get introduced to this topic a lot more intimately. It's called Vision 2020 from eyesight to insight. So that's kind of what we did in our session today of, going from the eyesight to the insight. So that can be rented or purchased online at vision2020movie.com. And yeah, I work with people individually online, and I also lead these group programs. So I'm just getting ready to start a 6-month group going from August 2023 to January 2024. So if the timing works out for that, people can look into that. Otherwise, it's something I offer on kind of an ongoing basis. But I'm really excited about what we did last month. We tried a new format where it's very much inspired by Dr. Bates, because people would go see Dr. Bates for 15-minute appointments in the clinic in New York City. And at first I was like, wow, that's not very much time. Like, how did people get results? But I ended up designing this program called the 22-Day Vision Tune-Up, where we meet on Zoom every weekday for 15 minutes. And it's just a real quick little dose of the Bates method. And then people are sent off to kind of integrate it into their everyday life. And people were getting some pretty impressive results in just 1 month from that. So I'm hoping to maybe get another one of those going later this year. Definitely want to do some more of that kind of thing. But all of this stuff, can be found at my main website, integraleyesight.com. And that should link you to all the different podcasts, the YouTube videos, the programs, lessons, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely vouch for Nathan. The podcast is great, the book is great, and everything else as well. Really enjoyed the documentary. So, all right, definitely recommend it. Thanks a lot, Nathan.
Thank you again.